everybody, this is Amy at City's Edge Quilt Shop and Sewing Center in Warsaw, Missouri, and I'm going to be sharing with you today a tutorial on how to utilize the pumpkin quilt papers by Lori Holt and how you can create some personal whimsy to your quilt utilizing these papers. So first, let's talk about some of the supplies you will need. The first thing, obviously, will be the pumpkin quilt papers themselves. This is by Lori Holt and Riley Blake, and they are 10-inch pieces. There's 42 of them in your package, and they look like this, okay? And they give you the number system, which I will share with you in a moment on what we're going to do with that. And it also gives you full instructions inside the packet on how you can put a quilt ensemble together. The other thing you're going to need is a rotary cutter, okay? And my suggestion is to put a brand new blade in it. You're going to be going through 3 layers of fabric as well as a piece of paper, and you're going to make mini cuts. So just relieve a little tension onto your wrists and go ahead and put a new blade in there. You will thank me later. Okay, the other thing I would suggest is either an 8.5 by 12.5 or 18-inch ruler, something shorter because these are small pieces, and a squaring ruler. So I would suggest both of those. I am just going to use my squaring ruler right now for simplicity's sake. The other thing you're going to need is a variety of 10-inch squares. So whether you go through your stash, you have some leftover 10-inch squares, or maybe you have some fabric that you can cut down, utilize your stripology ruler, cut some 10-inch squares very quick. And that's what I did with this. And I am using today 9 different 1/3 cuts of Lori Holt's Autumn fabric line. And so 1/3 cuts, 9 different fabrics, and a light, medium, and dark. As you can see, they're all pretty much in the same colorway. Okay, and you will want 10-inch squares for this process. The other thing I recommend, of course it's not required, is a rotating mat. This just becomes very helpful as you are cutting the pieces for the quilt block. I want to show you a quilt that I made a while back. This was made a long time ago by a pattern, and I don't even know whose it is any longer, but it's made in the same process, and I don't believe you can get this pattern anymore. I've tried to get it the last couple of years for the shop, but Lori Holt this year also came up with tree papers similar to the pumpkin papers, and the process is exactly the same. You use 3 different fabrics, 10-inch squares, and when you do that, you get 3 different blocks when you're finished, okay? So be on the lookout for those tree papers. It makes a very cute quilt. So I'm going to start with 3 different fabrics that we have cut from our 3rd yard cuts into our 10-inch squares, like so. And then we ironed this piece of paper on the very top block, okay? So once we do that, here it is. It's adhered to that first block, and then our other 3 pieces. And very simple, cut here first, okay? So we're gonna just follow along with what they are saying to cut. So I'm just gonna make sure that my squares are lined up because I moved the papers just a little bit. And I'm gonna go ahead and cut here first. Okay, once I do that, I'm just going to go around the process, each one, and cut as they have indicated. So here's cut 2, and then cut 3. And this is a very forgiving pattern. When you see how we sew it together and how we line everything up, and then square the block at the end, you will see that it's very forgiving. And pretty hard to screw up actually, because the more wonky it is, the more whimsical your quilt is. One thing I do want to point out, if you see, I'm turning this, but I am not cutting off the mat. Okay, I am going to go turn the mat to where I can put the majority of the ruler onto my turning mat so I can get the best back in. All right, so now that I've done that, I have all of my pieces for my blocks, okay? And I'm going to have 3 different blocks when I get done with this. So the first thing I'm going to do to mix them up is I'm going to take the bottom piece and place him on top. And then I'm going to take the top piece, let me peel him back, and place him on bottom. Okay. So now when I peel all of my pieces, you will see I'll have 3 different fabrics, one as the background, one as my stem, and one as my pumpkin. All right, so there we go. I won't continue on with that, but you can see that this would be pumpkin number 1. This would be pumpkin number 2. And then this would be pumpkin number 3. Okay, so you have three different blocks that you get out of the 3 layers in one cutting. All right, so I'm gonna put this guy aside. That's how you would cut them. Your blocks will end up at 7.5 inches. I have it upside down. And so we had, just put this back so I can show you the pieces that make sense here. There you go. Okay, so here is what I am sewing together. And when I do that, you'll see that it's a little bit off. So when I go and I marry these 2 points, okay, that it looks like it's not going to be straight. But you're gonna go ahead and sew your 1/4 inch there. And when you open it up, you can see it's the same. When you open it up, it straightens up. Okay, and you'll sew both sides on like that. Once you do that, you're going to press these open to the outside. Okay. Now, for your pumpkin, you had your paper that showed you 4, 5, 6, 7. You're going to also marry up the corners, the points of your pumpkin, and sew a 1/4 inch on these pieces. And I recommend doing 4 and 5. Press those open and press them towards the outside triangles, and then attach your 6 and 7 using a 1/4 inch. Okay, that way if there's any overlap right here, you don't have to worry about that. This is already pressed open. Okay, so you're going to line these up, do your 1/4 inch, and then press them open like that. Okay, so now that we've done that, I now have my stem and background fabric with it pressed open, and I have my pumpkin ready to go. But I want to point this out to you right here. See how it comes down and you have what we would normally call dog ears, but it goes all the way across that way. So what we're gonna do first is trim that off. So I'm just gonna line this up along my triangles. I landed on something. Okay, and trim that up. I'm not going to worry about the sides right now, even though they have the same little funky dog ears here. I'm going to leave those because overall in the end, I'm going to go ahead and trim the block to 7.5. But this piece right here, I'm going to go ahead and flip it over and sew a 1/4 inch. Now, because of these little triangles, and they are a little wonky, your piece might not match exactly to the edges. Don't worry about that because again, we're going to trim this down to 7.5. So this gives you an opportunity to move it around a little bit if you want to, just to make a little bit of a different pumpkin if you're going to try to create a little more whimsical pumpkin. So go ahead, put them together, sew a 1/4 inch going across, and then you're going to press it towards your seam, towards your pumpkin. Okay, so in the end, your seam will be pressed down towards your pumpkin, and you'll have a little pumpkin that looks like this. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and square our pumpkin, and I'm using the Creative Grids square ruler 12.5. And the reason I said you would want at least the 8.5 by 12.5 is because we are trimming this to 7.5. So if you have at least the 8.5 inch ruler, it'll make it much easier for you to square it. Okay, so I am looking at this and it's almost 9 inches square. Now, that just happened that way. Some of my blocks were like 8.5 or something like that. Just depends on how you have it. So you have to kind of just trim it down. I right now have it kind of corner to corner, and I don't want to go all the way over to 7.5. Here's what 7.5 would be, and I would cut that much of my pumpkin off. So I want to square it a little bit, make it make a little bit of sense, get it a little bit in there. But before I go ahead and trim that, I want to show you what we have done so far up here on my design wall. So here's what I have. Here's my 3 blocks made from this fabric, my 3 blocks from this fabric, and my 3 blocks from those fabrics. And if you look at this, you will see this little guy is a little stumpy. This little guy is pointed in a different direction than this guy. This guy is a little fatter on the left-hand side than the right-hand side. Let's see, this guy is a little bit shorter and stumpier than this guy is a little taller. So to create a little whimsy in your quilt, you might move around where your 7.5 inch squaring is going to fall. But in the long run, every single one of them are 7.5 inch. So when you go to sew them together, they should go together very well. And the other thing about changing them around a little bit is that you have no seams that you're trying to match up. So you have this whimsical little quilt and you don't have to worry about all the seams matching perfectly. So how do you turn that? So when you have these guys layered up, your 3 fabrics, just flip them over and then adhere your paper to the back side of your stack and then cut them. And when you do that, you will get your stem going in the opposite direction. So you can have that a little bit of a change going through your quilts. So I'm going to square this up. I am going to show you one thing that I do like to do when I am squaring this particular block. Okay, so if I look at my pumpkin, I do have one seam that should be horizontal across the block. So I want to keep it horizontal. I do not want it to be all wonky and be going, you know, cattywampus down the block. I want to keep this straight. Now, the one next to it might be up here, but at least they will all be horizontal seams. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this for me. It's about a 2-inch seam, just about. And if you want to, and again, it's a 9-inch block and you got to get it down to 7.5. I'm going to start with this on how big do I want my seam. So I'm going to go ahead and do, let's say, 1 3/4. I think I did a lot of them at 1.5 inches, and then I did that one that was really short. So I'm just going to start by doing this, but what I'm doing is putting my 1 3/4 on that seam all the way down that seam, and I'm making my first cut. Then I'm going to go ahead and turn it, and I'm going to go 7.5 inches over, and again, if I have it, use this as my first line, I can use it again to make sure that I'm straight. I'm at 7.5 inches. So there's the top and bottom of my pumpkin. Okay, so now that I have that, my 7.5, oh, I put it on the other ruler. What you might like to do is get a piece of tape, if I can find it here we go. Or if you have some glow tape, that works great. But if you're wondering where your 7.5 is and you really want to see it, put a mark on your ruler so you know 1 to 7.5. You can kind of see, all right, if I have this much over here, I have this much over here, if you truly wanted to center the block. If you want it to be a little wonky like what I had on that one block, then I am going to line up this line again, and I'm going to go ahead and trim it. 7.5 is right here. To me, that would be a lot to cut off. Let me show you what that would look like. That's a pretty wonky, and it might look like a little bit like the one I had. So, let me see, is it on the opposite side? It is. I don't want it to look exactly like the other pumpkin that I did that to, so it's on the opposite side. So there we go. So I have a 7.5 inch block here, and now I am ready to place him somewhere on my quilt. And you can decide where is the better place for him to go. You might want your stems. Maybe this is all similar fabrics. I started mixing them up when I got to that one. So we had 9 different fabrics, and out of the 9 fabrics, we'll have 36 blocks out of 9 1/3 yard cuts. So that is how you do the Lori Holt pumpkin quilt papers. I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. Please like us and share us. We will be back with you with another tutorial soon. Y'all have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining me at City's Edge Quilt Shop and Sewing Center in Warsaw, Missouri. Bye-bye now.